Okay, this is our rational expressions review. So the adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, etc. portion of our rationals. So in order to subtract, you need a common denominator. Remember, any just GCF is what I'm going to call it, any 5p situation, the 5 is a factor and the p is the factor. We don't put parentheses around it like we usually do the p minus 2, but they are each separate. So what this one is missing, or I guess I should say what the common denominator is going to be, is a 5p and p minus 2. So the first fraction is missing the p minus 2, top and bottom. The second fraction is missing the 5p. Remember, you multiply on top, 4p squared, distribute, plus 8p. How about minus? And then on top of that, this problem says minus, so be extra careful there, minus. And then 5 times 5p is 25p. Then you combine like terms. So we've got 4p squared, what is that, 25 minus 33p over our common. And then you factor. P comes out of both of those. The bottom is already factored. And then because of the way they're written, because this p is not being added or subtracted to anything, and this p is not being added or subtracted to anything, the entire, or the p I should say, crosses out, and you have 4p minus 33 over 5 times p minus 2 left, and your excludeds are still 0 from the crossed off p and 2. Okay, let's see. Here's question 2. Remember, you're always welcome to pause the video and try it on your own. The only thing is, you have a couple options here. I'm going to factor the denominator, because had I not factored that, maybe it matched this, just had a GCF. In this case, it didn't. But I always want to factor it in case this is already included in that side, which would make the problem easier. But since it's not, I am going to need one of each. When I factor, I like to cross out the denominator. So I am going to need my common to have a 3, a b minus 1, and a b plus 1. So the first fraction is missing the b plus 1 on top and bottom. The second fraction, it's missing the 3 and the b minus 1. Remember, we multiply on top, distribute. I want to switch colors though. 6b plus 6. This problem's plus. Just multiply those together first, right? So it's 6, and then distribute the 6. Combine like terms. This is a step where you would factor if the top was factorable. 12 reduces by 3. 4 goes into 12. Or 3 goes into 12 4 times. So you end up with 4b over b minus 1, b plus 1. Your exclusions are anything that would ever make the bottom 0. Okay, try number 3. Again, I'm going to factor it. This is 2 times n minus 3. So I like to use the factored form. You could use 2n minus 6, but then at your last step, you have to factor it and check and see if anything reduces. So common, 1 of everything. So think about this. We're going to have a 3, an n, a 2, and an n minus 3. So that's really 6n, n minus 3, right? The 2 times the 3. So let's see what's missing. The first fraction on the left is missing the 2 and the n minus 3. The right fraction is missing 3n. So distribute on top. So multiply these together first, so it's 8. Distribute the 8. This problem's plus. Distribute. Combine like terms. Also put them in order, right? Descending order. Now we better check and see if the top of that is factorable. So I'm going to do what I did in my How to Factor Like a Teacher video. If you watched that, you're welcome to draw an area diagram. Just pause it right now and draw an area diagram if you need to. The only way to get 3n squared is 3n and n. Okay, here's a tip. When you're doing rationals, oftentimes we like things to cross out. It's not always the case. Remember, I told you in class how hard it is to actually write them that way. But if there is a factor in the denominator already, check and see if that factor is a factor of yours. So as I'm testing these in my head, I'm going to try -3 there, which in order to get -24, it would have to be +8 here. And if I do that, I get -9 + 8, and it does work. So there's a little hint. Look at the other side of the fraction for potential factors. Now those n minus 3's cross out. I have 3n plus 8 over 6n. Remember, you cannot reduce the 3n and the 6n because the plus 8 is holding that together. And n cannot be 0, and it still cannot be 3 because at some point in time, n minus 3 was a denominator. So hopefully that helps you a little with adding and subtracting. Okay, a little bit of solving. So remember, in these, you want to do fraction busters. We want to get rid of all the fractions. Still by looking for a common denominator. If I want every denominator to cross out, I need to use x squared. Because if I just have an x up here, not enough of them will cross out, right? So you're going to multiply the top of everybody by 2x squared. That's the common denominator. Then some of it crosses out. This x crosses out one of those x, and then I multiply. This x crosses out one of those x, and then I multiply. Everything crosses out, and I have -1. And now you just have an equation to solve. Move the x's to one side. Divide by -2. X potentially equals 1/2. The only thing you need to check and see is, will 1/2 make you divide by 0? If I put in 1/2 there, that's not 0. That's not 0. A half squared times 2 is definitely not 0. So 1/2 is my answer. Okay, here's another equation one for you to try. Feel free to pause the video and try it on your own. X squared. Everybody gets multiplied by an x squared. So that some of it will cancel out. That whole x squared crosses out. One of those x's crosses out. That whole x squared crosses out. Combine like terms. Move everything to one side. Divide by a negative. And then check. If I plug -8 in, will I ever be dividing by 0? Nope. So -8 is the solution. Okay, moving on to multiplying. Multiplying, you need to factor everything. So I suggest you pause this video and factor everything. I'm not going to walk you through the factoring, especially not in the area diagram. You're welcome to watch my How Do You Factor Like a Teacher video if you need some help factoring in your head. But here I go. The only way to get x squared is x and x, 10 and 11. So if I try 10 here and 1 here, they both need to be negative so that they multiply to be +10 but add to be -11. That looks good. The only way to get x squared is x and x. Factors of 56 that add to be 15. 7 and 8 plus 7 and plus 8. Problem says times x, x. Still 7 and 8, but I need -8 and +7. And then x minus 8 is already done. Okay, any factor that matches on top can cross out with any factor that matches on the bottom. Anything that is left is your solution. Anything that was ever in the denominator is an excluded value, including the -7 that we crossed out. I'm doing zero product property, right? That's where the -7 came from. The -8 and the +8. This is our solution. Don't multiply it out. Unless for some reason it's multiple choice and the solutions are multiplied out, we do not usually multiply these back out. Okay, number 7. Feel free to pause it and try it. Start by factoring. S 21 is 7 and 3. You need the positive to be bigger. There you go. 24, 2 and 12. That's not going to be 11. 3 and 8. Minus 8 minus 3. 24 and 11. 24 is 6 and 4. Also 3 and 8. If they're both negative, that'll work. Over 6. Anything on top that matches anything on the bottom? I just factored the same thing twice, didn't I? Could have crossed that out a lot earlier, huh? And then the remaining factors with the restriction. Okay, our first division problem. Go ahead and factor at the same time as you flip it. So kind of an easy start because this is already factored. Make it multiply and flip the bottom one. So flip the second one. So the bottom goes to the top, take out a GCF. The top goes to the bottom, already factored. Cross out matching parentheses. And then reduce the whole numbers. Divide by 2, divide by 2. So everything that's left, I have a 5, x plus 5, and a 2. And anything that was ever in the denominator. So remember, technically that x plus 5, this was in the bottom and then I moved it to the top. That is a restriction. And now the 7 that's on the bottom, also a restriction. Okay, last one, I think. So pause it, factor it, flip and multiply. So this whole fraction will be upside down. Cubic factoring. X minus 2, x squared plus 2x plus 4. Cubic factoring is in the first video you watched. X plus 2, x minus 2, difference of squares, supposed to be quick and easy. Multiply. The x squared plus 8x plus 7 is going to go to the top. X plus 1, x plus 7. The 9x term is going to go to the bottom. Multiplies to be 14, adds to be 9, 2 and 7. And then if they match, cross them out. We have an x minus 2 and an x minus 2, plus 7, plus 7. The x plus 2's that are both on the bottom, you can't cross those out. So on top, we have an x plus 1 and a long trinomial. On the bottom, we have an x plus 2. You can write squared. I just like to write them both out. Anything that was ever in the bottom has a restriction. 2 and negative 2, negative 7, and negative 1. So hopefully this helps you guys out with rational expressions. Hope you're doing well.